I'm going to call on one or two or three of you to state your questions before Joe gives any answer, and I'm going to really constrain your time if I have any market power for Joe to answer. And we'll be talking about a lot of these issues throughout the day. So are there those of you, Ganesh?
Hi, this is Ganesh Gürkaynak. Would you say that the digital companies of today are actually the modern-day thugs the way some other companies have been in the past, and therefore we shouldn't change our methods of dealing with the antitrust problems posed by them? In other words, do you feel that multi-sidedness, innovation worries, or issues of the ecosystems that are created by these entities being impacted negatively, all of these are actually ways of defending the same thug behavior that has always been there? Or do you think there are merits in some of these worries that warrant a more sophisticated analysis in certain portions of the antitrust realm?
Great question. Now, as I said, I would take one more now and then have Joe answer briefly. Yes.
Morning, Professor Stiglitz. Unlike many of the participants here, I represent the government, and I'm from the government of India. And my question to you is a very simple prescription. We have a competition law which is about 16 years old, and we are in the process of taking up a review. On a generic level, what are the 5 core principles that you would like to see in every competition law for every developing economy, considering what kind of market realities we face and the challenges posed by the digital revolution?
Thank you. Okay, Joe, you have, what do you have, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and other conversation will just have to be one to one.
First, I think the digital is a more complex problem. I mean, as I said, I think they are in many ways worse and more invidious than the old antitrust, partly because they have the ability to engage in this price discrimination, which was not a characteristic of the past, and that creates and the big data AI enables that has the, you might say, a returns to scale that can lead them to be more strongly ensconced than even steel. I mean, we know what happened in steel and auto and all that. We have many producers, and those turned out to be relative to the global economy, many firms, although they're local monopolies in particular. But in the case of big data and AI and the digital companies, there are theoretical reasons for arguing that the more data, the more market power one has. And that may make it more difficult to dislodge them. And that combined with their waking up to the fact that they can engage in what I call these preemptive mergers. That is to say, they're acquiring firms before they reach the threshold that there would be antitrust merger review. And that means there's no threat of, they buy their threats while they're young. And since they know there are a limited number of those, you know, Facebook buying Instagram bought one of the major possible alternative platforms. So the dynamics of the industry seems to be unfolding in ways that, at least for a very long time, they can preserve themselves. Finally, they have another set of issues that we've never faced before: the invasion of our privacy and the ability to manipulate our politics in a way that we saw. And all of these are aspects of and there's a kind of lack of transparency with the algorithms. So all of these add up to a problem that is of an order of magnitude worse. And yet, we can't divide it like we did in Standard Oil. It's not clear having 5 firms invading our privacy is a better idea than having 1 firm. Competition in invading privacy is not the solution. So we are going to need much stronger regulatory frameworks like Europe's GDPR. But as you do that, you start to realize, why one of the reasons that Apple and Facebook may have come out in favor of GDPR is it puts smaller firms at a disadvantage of the compliance costs. So there are a whole set of issues that we're just beginning to think through that make curbing their market power, I think, much more difficult, and we'll need new tools. But yeah, so let me just stop on that. On the other hand, one of the advantages of the new digital is that we get a lot of data. We have more information from which we could, if we use that, be able to detect bad behavior. But I don't know if you remember, just as one other example, the early airline case where they were coordinating action through
the early days of the computer.
Early days of the computer.
Right.
That they used that in a way that was very hard to detect.
That's right.
And that is going to be another aspect of this new digital world, that they will be inventing ways of coordinating, including that will be difficult for us to undo. When we find it out, we'll have a better trail, but it may be very, very difficult to detect.
Right.
The question is a really good question of what are the...
A good core principle. It's a really good question, but you have to answer half a minute now, and
Okay.
later, conversation later.
I suppose, let me begin by a negative answer, which is don't copy the U.S. antitrust law and our presumptions and our, our whole standards that we have used. I think what I said at the end, that the challenges of development and maintaining a competitive landscape in a developing country are different than in a developed country. And our laws are not working in the United States, and therefore not going to be working, even less well suited for a developing country. So the issue that I talked about Walmart is an issue that India has faced. And if you thought about the impact on your economy of having Walmart displace millions of small enterprises, when the economy has not been able to generate jobs over the last 10 years, the fraction of the ratio of new entrants that they've been able to find formal employment for is very small. Means that you really have to think about what would this do to the broader macroeconomic competitive landscape. And so the microeconomic perspective that has been the focus, for a good reason, in the United States, I think is wrong. And the same thing I would say, abuse of market power, using the European standard is, I think, the right one. So I think you ought to look around the world and look at practices that have worked. I also think that the way we go about doing antitrust, prosecuting, is not a good one, except for the lawyers and the economists. Somebody put it at the meeting at FTC that the way we've designed our current antitrust standards in law in the United States is you have to use all your legal, the FTC said it has to use all its legal legal efforts, all the resources